welcome back to the channel. I'm excited to have you here because this is going to be New Comic Book Day for July the 21st of 2021, and there's quite a few books on this list. It was almost impossible for me to narrow it down, so I have my top 6 books that I'm really looking forward to, as well as quite a few other, I guess, honorable mentions. So before I ramble too long, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, connect, follow, do whatever you do on the platform you're on. Just look for my furry face inside of an orange circle and click all the buttons next to it. The first book on the list this week is We Live the Last Days #1. This is from AFTERSHOCK. It's a free comic book day book, and it's supposed to tell the story of some of the characters before, like, I think after the gauntlets fell and We Live, but before we actually pick up the story with Hototo and his sister Tala. And I'm really excited for it. I've enjoyed We Live from day one, but we recently got to really dig into it and talk about quite a bit of everything that happens in that book with the Comic Vet on Sunday nights at Week's End on Mark's channel over at Legion of Comics. I definitely suggest checking that out if you've already read the book. If you haven't read the book and you're on the fence or anything, we do a spoiler, we go in with all the spoilers, so if for some reason you haven't been convinced yet, check that out and you can find out what happens and why we love that story so much. But I think we're all, over the moon for this new comic book, or this free comic book day version, and the story that it's going to add to the world, especially as we get closer and closer to the release of the second story arc from that book. So I'm excited for this. I cannot wait to get my hands on it, and I would suggest everybody else pick it up as well. Bermuda #1. This is from IDW, and it's written by John Layman. John Layman is one of my favorite comic book writers because he knows how to write a story that's honestly really good, but at the same time he knows how to make it very quirky and humorous and interesting. Very interesting. I think The Man Who Effed Up Time, that was such a good book. It could have been as simple as just, some kind of time travel comedy sort of thing, and it works on that level. But there's so much more in that story as well about how we deal with ourselves and internal conflict and, kind of the world and the events that we create around us based on how we interact with the world and the people around us. So I really love how John Layman writes. I really love his style. I love his interests. Outer Darkness, one of my favorite books of all time. The Outer Darkness Chew crossover was excellent. It was one of the few times where I was like, this crossover might not work, and then I read it and thought, I can't believe that I ever doubted it. Chew was great, and as you'll see, there's also another series called Chew that'll be coming out that he writes as well. So I love John Layman's work. I feel like he's been kind of missing from the scene lately. He's probably writing something that I haven't been paying attention to, but I'm really excited to see him coming back with some more work, and I'm definitely excited to check out Bermuda and see how this story begins. Compass #2. This was a book that I talked about the first one quite a bit. After reading it, I feel like it's well paced, but it's at a slow pace. It's set in a giant world that they had a lot of foundation to lay, but I also really love the perspective the story's told from. Most stories here in the West that we get are told from the perspective of the Anglo-Saxon, white. Whoever, history is written by the victors. And so in the Western world, that was us. And so that's oftentimes how the story is told. I love that we're dealing in the 1300s, and this young girl came from the Middle East, and whenever she interacts with the people of Britain at the time in the 1300s, we actually get to see that, not that the British were dumb, but they had this very limited perspective. They thought of Britain as the greatest empire in the world, even though it wasn't, and they thought that this was the world. They even ask her where she came from, and when she explains that she came from the Middle East, they're like, oh, that's way on the other side of the world, it's just an imaginary place. And she's like, no, it's a real place, and we have more advanced medicine and science and everything else that you're missing, you know? So it's not saying like you guys are dummies, but it definitely presents a different perspective on history than I've ever seen in a Western tale. So I really loved it for that. It gave us a fresh perspective. The character's interesting. You get these great like Indiana Jones kind of action moments and, you know, like temple digging and things like that. You get some great double crossing with some of the other characters. But again, you get this unique perspective that just isn't touched on in Western stories very often. And so I really appreciated it for that. I'm excited for the second one. I will say it's probably not for everybody, but this was a book that's definitely down my alley, and I'll be keeping up with it. If this sounds interesting to you, honestly, it might be better to wait for the trade. It's an Image book, so the first trade will probably be $10, like most of their first volume 1 trades. And so $10 for probably what's going to be 4 issues. That's a great way to see it, to dip your toes in and see if you'll enjoy this world. But as for me, I'm definitely excited to read more of this. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow #2. This is a DC book. This is Tom King and Bilquis. And I really loved the first one. I know some people had complaints about it. There were some issues that other people didn't like. Me personally, I grew up on True Grit, and I love the remake of True Grit. I think they are both some of the best Westerns out there. I absolutely love them, and so Tom King homaging that with Supergirl works for me. I also loved, you know, it has like this kind of Xena Warrior Princess vibe to it. I really enjoy that as well. I was a big fan of that growing up. And overall, I just really love the way there's a lot of narration to it, but the narration itself is written in more of a prose style that kind of help builds out the non-visual elements of the world, and it's fun to read. I thought it was very well written. As far as the characters and the dialogue, I thought it was spot on. The people on this planet, they speak in a almost like Old English Shakespearean style, whereas Supergirl talks in a very like modern Earth style, much like us. And so I thought that was a great way to kind of like pitch her as an outsider in this world, but also like not make it sound like anybody is like less than, you know? So I really enjoyed Supergirl. I know there was plenty of people that had complaints or issues with it. This is 8 issues and I'm all in on it. I absolutely loved the first one. The Many Deaths of LAILA STARR #4. This is another book that I absolutely have loved. 1, 2, 3, all excellent. What I'll say about the 3rd issue, a lot of people complained about it. They said they didn't like it. I actually thought it was one of the best issues in the run so far. The whole story was told from the perspective of a cigarette that was, you know, LAILA STARR was able, she basically like accidentally breathed a slight bit of sentience into it. And so the cigarette tells the story. The book opens with her lighting the cigarette because, you know, once again, she's come back to life as a human and she's indulging in, you know, human vices. And so cigarettes is one of those things. She's at a party, she lights a cigarette, but she has like, you know, some remaining, just slightly low-level remaining magic in her from her time as Death. And so that basically brings the cigarette, gives it sentience. It's not like walking around or anything, but it's telling this story, it's narrating this story. And so as the cigarette gets passed from LAILA STARR to another character, that's how the story unfolds, and that's how we learn about humanity and their vices and what it really means to live, but also what it means to have self-control. And I thought it did a great job of doing this through this really unique narrative. I know people love the Pizza Dog issue from Hawkeye, and so I think if that's something you love, if you love stories that are told from like unique perspectives or, you know, like kind of an outsider type of storytelling, then I think you would really love LAILA STARR, because the second story kind of takes place from the perspective of a death crow, and the 3rd issue took place from the perspective of a cigarette. And I think it's absolutely genius. I've loved every episode or every issue of LAILA STARR, and I cannot wait to see what Rom V has in store for issue #4. Sticking with Rom V, we have Catwoman #33. This is another book that I've heard complaints about because You know, we had issue 32. Catwoman herself was not really in the issue. It was other characters telling stories about Selena Kyle, Catwoman, and like what it means to really know her. And then we had the annual issue that once again it was about Father Valley and how, you know, kind of his origin story, where he came from and why he is who he is. These were both well-written stories. I really enjoyed them, even though 32 was kind of a filler issue and the annual was an origin story for another character instead of Catwoman. I thought the stories were so well-written that I got lost in them, and I enjoyed them, and I thought they were extremely well-written. They carried me through, and I enjoyed it, even though I was reading, you know, filler material. So I understand people's complaints there, but again, Ram V is just such a fantastic writer. I have no issue with how he handled filler material. And so that leaves me, I'm really excited for 33. Based on the cover, it looks like Father Valley and Catwoman are finally going to have this showdown. And so, of course, I'm excited to see that. But overall, I'm just excited for more Ram V. And probably my favorite writer right now. Like, him and Tom King are pretty much carrying my pull list right now. So these are the kinds of stories I like. I know, like I said, I feel like I found an issue that other people had with all of these. It's not trying to be negative. I just want to share the perspective that I take from each of these books. Now, here's some, I guess I'm going to quickly run through a couple of these honorable mentions. So, Superman and the Authority #1. I really don't have too much hype for this myself. I really don't know anything about the Authority, but I have been enjoying the Superman stuff. I know Grant Morrison is very well received, and I've enjoyed the few things I've read by him. And I know my friend Mark from Legion of Comics is really really hyped for this Superman and the Authority. And I think it's going to be attached to a lot of what's going on with Superman moving forward. So I'm definitely going to check that one out. But I really don't have any expectations for what it is or what it might be. Skybound X #3 will be out. And I'm excited for this one. I really enjoyed the first one. The second one just came out today, so I haven't got to read it. I couldn't tell you how well that one turned out. But I'm really excited for the Daniel Warren Johnson Murder Falcon story that's in this one. And I thought the first Rick Grimes 2000 story was good. Although a bit cheesy and over the top, it was well delivered. And so I'm excited to check out #3, but you know, since I haven't read #2, it's hard to tell you exactly how I feel about that whole series so far. The Flash 772 is going to be out, and this series has gotten a lot better. Like, it started in March. I mean, once Williamson left last year, it was just absolute garbage. And then once it relaunched in March, it wasn't very good, to be honest. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't very good, and it's gotten better with each issue. 772 seems to be kind of the beginning of where it might actually be really good again. So I'm excited to check out 772, but I have that hesitation of, like, it really hasn't been my favorite run so far. Nightwing 82 will be out. This is going to follow up on the reveal that we got from number 81. Tom Taylor's been killing it. I absolutely love this book, and this is probably one of my most anticipated reads of this week. However, I feel like I've talked so much about 80 and 81 that it was hard for me to put that into the category of let me talk a lot about this book again. Power Rangers #9. This series has been pretty mediocre across the board. It feels like every time they do a pretty good issue, the next one's that much worse for it. So it's been up and down, and honestly, it feels like they're stalling to try to do something else. Maybe there's a crossover coming with Mighty Morphin, which is the exact opposite of what I want. I think Power Rangers has a ton of potential if they would take this team and just put them out in the stars and disconnect them from everything else in Power Ranger continuity. I think I would really be on board with that. Unfortunately, they want to keep it all connected and do the universe thing that's so popular these days, and I think that's hurting Power Rangers more than anything else. Chew, C-H-U, Chew #6 from John Layman and Dan Boltwood. I really love the first arc of this. This follows the story of Tony Chew's younger sister, Saffron Chew, and kind of like the criminal underworld she operates in. I thought that first story arc of 5 issues was really great. I wish there hadn't been a hiatus, but given that there was, I'm excited to have it back at this point. Dark Blood #1 from Boom Studios. I really don't know anything about this book. I read the synopsis. It seems like it's dealing with maybe like some race relations in the South. I believe it was set in Arkansas or Alabama or something like that. The main reason I'm going to check it out is because it's a Boom #1 and they have a tendency to drop some really strong stories, and so I don't want to miss out in that sense. At the same time, there's really nothing about this book that truly grabbed my attention and said this is a must read. So again, a lot of it is the Boom name that has me interested in checking this one out. And then Blue and Gold #1. This is Dan Jurgens and Ryan Sook. And people have been asking for another Booster Gold Blue Beetle story for a long time. Dan Jurgens is well known for how he can write these kinds of stories. And so I'm excited to check it out. But honestly, I've read very little of Booster Gold, and I don't think I've read any of Blue Beetle. So for me, this is a book that I'm interested in, and I'm hopeful that it really hooks me in and pulls me into that duo, because I know how much people love these characters together. But for me, it's on the list simply because of that and not because of a personal attachment. So that's all the books for this week. I feel like I ran through those a little bit quicker than I expected, but like I said, I think most of the books on my list are things that really connect with me, and this is something that I've been trying to tap into lately. I feel like people take my reviews as objective, as if I'm saying nobody should read them, and that's really not what I mean, but I can understand how my personal delivery of a review tends to sound that way. Never am I telling somebody that you're wrong or that I don't respect your opinion and your perspective. So I'm trying to do something that's a little more all-inclusive and explains where I'm coming from on a lot of books. So I hope everybody else is having a great week. I hope that the summer's treating you well. We're kind of getting the world back to normal, so people are getting out more and more. I'll be going on vacation tomorrow, actually, and I'll be gone for about a week and a half. So I don't know what my video schedule is going to look like for that exactly. I'm trying to put some stuff together, so I do have a couple of drops here and there. But overall, I hope everybody's having a wonderful summer, and I can't wait to get back to it. And please, in the comments, let me know your thoughts on any of these books and how I talked about them. And, let me know what books you are excited for. Fill me on some of these other books that I just gave a quick overview of, so that I'll know if I should be anticipating them a little more or a little less than I already am. That's all I got for today. Until next time, keep flipping pages.